The Galactic Council Chamber floated in the void between star systems, a massive structure of crystalline walls and gravity-defying architecture. Inside, representatives from 47 species gathered around the circular forum, their forms ranging from the gelatinous Kix to the towering stone-like Verith. At the center of all their attention sat a single human woman in a plain gray suit. Ambassador Sarah Chen kept her expression neutral as the Korthian delegate, a creature resembling a praying mantis made of silver metal, clicked its mandibles in what passed for laughter among its kind. The humans wish to petition for protected status, the Korthian announced, its translation device rendering the clicks into standard galactic speech. They claim their world is defenseless against potential threats. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Verath representative, a being whose body seemed carved from living granite, leaned forward with a grinding sound. Defenseless? They have achieved faster-than-light travel. They have colonized 3 worlds in their system. Sarah nodded respectfully. It's true we've made some technological progress, but compared to the established powers of the galaxy, we're children playing with toys. Our weapons are primitive. Our shields can barely withstand a solar flare, let alone a military assault. We simply ask for the same protection offered to other developing worlds. The Kix delegate, a translucent blob that pulsed with bioluminescent thoughts, quivered in its containment sphere. The Council has reviewed your petition. Your species shows promise, but you must understand that protected status comes with restrictions. No military expansion beyond your home system. No weapons development beyond current levels. Acceptance of Council observers on your worlds. We accept all terms, Sarah said quickly, perhaps too quickly. Earth only wants peace. We've seen what war does to civilizations. Our own history is filled with the ashes of conflicts that nearly destroyed us. We don't want that path. The Malthorian observer, a reptilian creature with scales that shifted colors based on emotion, narrowed its eyes. Your species has a reputation, human. Your entertainment broadcasts that reach our space show nothing but violence and conflict. Your historical records speak of endless warfare. Sarah smiled sadly. That's exactly why we know we can't compete militarily. We've learned our lesson. Those days are behind us. We're farmers and artists now, not soldiers. We just want to live in peace and learn from the elder races. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, 32 species voted in favor of granting Earth-protected status. The restrictions were encoded into galactic law within the day. No species could threaten Earth without facing the full might of the Council's enforcement fleet. In return, humanity would remain exactly as it was, a modest civilization of peaceful people who had wisely chosen survival over pride. Sarah Chen returned to Earth a hero. The news feeds celebrated the achievement. Humanity had secured its future without firing a single shot. The politicians gave speeches about wisdom and maturity. The philosophers wrote treatises about humanity's evolution beyond violence. Deep beneath the Canadian Rockies, in a facility that didn't exist on any map, General Marcus Webb watched the same news broadcasts with a thin smile. Around him, holographic displays showed the true scope of Earth's military capabilities. Automated defense satellites that could vaporize a capital ship in seconds. Quantum displacement weapons that could crack a planet's core. AI-controlled drone swarms numbered in the billions. Kinetic bombardment platforms that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. How long do you think we can maintain the charade? Asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the head of Earth's actual defense research division. She stood beside a display showing a weapon that weaponized gravity itself, capable of creating miniature black holes. As long as necessary, Webb replied. The galaxy thinks we're sheep. Let them think it. Sheep don't get invaded. Sheep don't get forced into taking sides in conflicts between empires. Sheep get left alone. And if someone calls our bluff? Webb's smile widened. Then they'll learn why humans spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war before we ever left our planet. But until then, we play the part. We're helpless. We're weak. We're grateful for the protection of our betters. For 15 years, the strategy worked perfectly. Earth became known as the gentle world, home to poets and farmers who had wisely chosen peace. Human diplomats were welcomed across the galaxy as examples of what a species could become when it abandoned violent ambitions. Human art and music became celebrated throughout civilized space. Human restaurants opened on a dozen worlds, serving food that aliens found exotic and fascinating. The Council even held up Earth as an example during disputes with more aggressive species. "Look at the humans," they would say. They understood that military might is nothing compared to the protection of law and cooperation. No one noticed that human colony ships, traveling slowly to avoid suspicion, had seeded 18 different star systems with automated defense platforms disguised as mining equipment. No one paid attention when human trading vessels mapped every major military installation within 200 light-years. No one thought twice about the human scientists who asked endless questions about shield frequencies and weapons systems, supposedly out of academic curiosity. The Krell Empire changed everything. They came from the Galactic Rim, a species of conquerors who had subjugated 40 systems in the span of a century. They were massive beings, each one standing 12 feet tall with 6 arms ending in claws that could rend steel. Their ships were brutal things, designed for intimidation as much as combat, covered in spikes and painted with the blood of their enemies. The Krell didn't recognize the authority of the Galactic Council. They didn't believe in protected worlds or diplomatic immunity. They believed in strength, conquest, and the natural right of the powerful to dominate the weak. When they attacked the Phelios system, a peaceful civilization of amphibious beings under Council protection, the galaxy was shocked. The Council fleet responded immediately, but the Krell were ready. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with 17 Council ships destroyed and the Phelios homeworld burning. The Council convened an emergency session. The chamber was in chaos. Some species called for immediate mobilization. Others argued for diplomatic solutions. A few suggested abandoning the outer territories entirely. Sarah Chen, now Earth's permanent representative after 15 years of service, sat quietly in her seat and watched the panic spread. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, but her eyes held the same calm patience they always had. The Krell sent a message to the Council. Their demands were simple: surrender of 10 systems for colonization, tribute from 50 more, and complete withdrawal of Council authority from the Galactic Rim. The alternative was total war. The Council voted. 23 species wanted to negotiate. 18 wanted to fight. 6 abstained. The measure to resist failed to reach the required supermajority. "We must be realistic," the Kix delegate pulsed mournfully. "The Krell fleet outnumbers our enforcement forces 3-1. If we fight and lose, more worlds will burn." The Malthorian representative, who had questioned Sarah 15 years ago, slammed a clawed fist on the table. "Cowards! You would abandon entire civilizations to slavery?" "We would save lives," the Korthian clicked back. "This is not cowardice. This is wisdom." Sarah raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. The human representative rarely spoke unless she had something important to say, and her words had always been measured and thoughtful. "If I may," she said softly. "Earth would like to make an observation." "The humans have no stake in this fight," the Kix delegate said dismissively. "Your world is far from the Krell threat. You are protected by distance as much as by Council law." Sarah nodded. "That's true. We're safe. Our worlds won't burn. Our children won't be enslaved. We could simply look away." She paused, her eyes scanning the assembly. "But 15 years ago, you didn't look away from us. You could have ignored our petition. You could have left us to fend for ourselves. Instead, you chose to protect us, even though we offered you nothing in return except our gratitude. Your point, Ambassador? The Varath representative rumbled. My point is that we remember. We remember kindness. We remember generosity. We remember that this council stood up for the weak when it didn't have to. Sarah stood, and something in her posture made several delegates lean forward. Earth would like to formally volunteer to join the defense force against the Krell Empire. The silence was absolute. Then the Korthian delegate began clicking in what might have been laughter. No offense, Ambassador, but what could your peaceful people possibly contribute? You have no military fleet. You have no weapons beyond what you possessed 15 years ago. The restrictions of protected status prevent you from developing such things. Sarah smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the Malthorian delegate's scales shift to a wary yellow. That's not entirely accurate. The restrictions prevented us from military expansion beyond our home system. They prevented weapons development beyond current levels at the time, but they said nothing about properly cataloging what we already had. What are you saying? The Varath delegate asked slowly. I'm saying that Earth may have been less than entirely forthcoming about our capabilities when we requested protection. Sarah touched a control on her wrist, and the chamber's central display activated. Starships appeared in the hologram, sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that made several delegates gasp. We have a fleet. We've always had a fleet. We just chose not to use it. This is a violation of council law, the Kix delegate pulsed angrily. You lied. We omitted, Sarah corrected gently. We never said we were defenseless. We said we were defenseless compared to the established powers. At the time, that was true. Your technology was far beyond ours. But we've had 15 years to study, to learn, to adapt. We've taken your teachings and applied them in ways you never showed us. We've combined our own particular expertise in warfare with the scientific principles you so generously shared. The displays shifted, showing weapons that no delegate had ever seen before. Gravity wells that could trap entire fleets. Drone swarms guided by artificial intelligence that could adapt to any defense. Kinetic weapons that accelerated asteroids to relativistic speeds. Biological weapons that could sterilize a planet. Chemical weapons that could eat through any known armor. And more, much more, technologies that humans had developed in secret while the galaxy believed them to be harmless farmers. You've been preparing for war this entire time, the Malthorian said, its scales now a dark purple of mixed awe and fear. Not for war, Sarah said. For survival. There's a difference. We learned long ago that the best way to avoid a fight is to be so dangerous that no one dares to start one. But we also learned that looking dangerous makes you a target. So we chose to look weak while building strength in the shadows. Why reveal yourselves now? The Korthian asked, its mandibles still with shock. Sarah's expression hardened. Because the Krell need to learn a lesson that humanity learned thousands of years ago. The weak are not always helpless. Sometimes they're just waiting for the right moment to show their teeth. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each delegate. The Council protected us when we asked for help. Now we offer protection in return. Let Earth deal with the Krell. One human world against an empire? The Kix delegate pulsed. That's suicide. Perhaps, Sarah admitted. Or perhaps the Krell are about to discover why humans spent most of their history figuring out the most efficient ways to kill each other. We're very good at it. We just prefer not to advertise the fact. The Council debated for 6 more hours. In the end, they agreed to allow Earth to send a delegation to negotiate with the Krell. If negotiations failed, Earth would have permission to act in defense of Council worlds, but only with strict oversight and restrictions on weapon usage. Sarah accepted the terms with a gracious smile, As she left the chamber, the Malthorian delegate caught up with her. "Tell me truthfully, Ambassador," it said, its scales shifting to concerned orange. "Can you actually defeat the Krell?" Sarah looked at the alien, and for just a moment the mask of peaceful humanity slipped. In her eyes was something ancient and cold, a reminder that humans had clawed their way to the top of Earth's food chain through intelligence, adaptability, and an absolute refusal to surrender, even when defeat seemed certain. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But the Krell have never fought a species that considers warfare an art form. They're about to get an education in human military doctrine. Lesson 1. Never underestimate someone who pretends to be weak. They might be the most dangerous enemy you've ever faced." The Krell war leader Thax Kor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Blood of Conquest, and watched the diplomatic shuttle approach. His 6 arms flexed with anticipation, claws scraping against the metallic floor. Around him, his officers monitored their stations, ready to obliterate the small vessel if it showed any sign of treachery. "A human ship," his second-in-command growled. "The Council sends us sheep to negotiate." Thaxcor rumbled with amusement. The Krell had studied all the major species of the galaxy before beginning their expansion. Humans were at the bottom of the threat assessment list, a species of storytellers and merchants who had voluntarily limited their own growth in exchange for protection. Pathetic. "Let them dock," Thaxcor ordered. "I'm curious to hear what songs they'll sing before we take their worlds." The human delegation consisted of 3 individuals. The leader was a woman with gray-streaked hair who introduced herself as Ambassador Chen. The second was a tall man with dark skin and military bearing who didn't introduce himself at all. The third was a younger woman carrying what appeared to be a data storage device. "War Leader Thaxacor," Sarah said with a respectful nod. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "I agreed because destroying your ship would be a waste of ammunition," Thaxcor replied. His translator rendered his growls into flat, emotionless words, but his meaning was clear. "Speak quickly, human. Tell me what tribute your council is willing to pay to avoid destruction." Sarah smiled. "Actually, we're here to discuss what tribute you're willing to pay to avoid destruction." The bridge fell silent. Then Thaxcor's officers burst into harsh laughter. Even Thaxcor felt his chest vibrate with amusement. The human's audacity was almost admirable. "You threaten us? Your entire species has no military fleet. Your worlds are protected only by council law, which we don't recognize." Thaxcor leaned forward, his massive frame towering over the human delegation. "I could kill you where you stand and take your worlds within a month." "You could try," the tall man said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but something about it made Thaxacor's combat instincts flicker to attention. "This is General Marcus Webb," Sarah introduced. "He's here to explain exactly what would happen if you tried." Thaxcor gestured to a display. "Show me then, human general. Show me this mighty military that you've kept hidden from the galaxy." The younger woman activated her data device. The bridge's main display lit up with tactical information. Starship designs, weapon specifications, defense platforms. The numbers kept climbing, and Thaxcor's amusement slowly faded into calculation. "This is fabricated," his tactical officer said. "They're trying to deceive us with false data." "It's all real," Webb said. "Every ship, every weapon, every defensive installation. We built it while the galaxy thought we were painting pictures and writing poetry." "Why would you hide such strength?" Thaxcor demanded. Sarah answered. "Because strong predators attract challengers. Weak prey gets ignored. We chose to be ignored while we caught up to the rest of the galaxy. Now we've caught up, and you've made the mistake of threatening our friends." Thaxcor studied the data more carefully. The human fleet was smaller than the Krell Armada, but their technology was unlike anything he'd seen. Weapons that bent space itself, automated combat drones that could think and adapt, defensive systems that seemed to violate the laws of physics. "You're bluffing," he decided. "No species could develop such weapons while pretending to be peaceful farmers. Your council allies would have noticed." "They noticed what we wanted them to notice," Webb said. "We've been refining the art of deception for 10,000 years. We got very good at it." Thaxcor's tactical instincts were now screaming warnings. Something was wrong. The humans were too confident. Their body language showed no fear, only a calm certainty that made his blood run cold. Warriors recognized other warriors, and these humans moved like killers, despite their diplomatic clothes. "Leave," Thaxcor ordered. "Return to your council and tell them the Krell Empire will consider their surrender terms. We will contact them within 10 cycles with our demands." "That's not how this works," Sarah said. "You have one choice, war leader. Withdraw from all council territories immediately, pay reparations for the Phelios attack, and submit to galactic law, or face humanity in open combat." One human world against an empire? Thaxcor laughed, but the sound was hollow now. "You're insane." Webb stepped forward. For the first time, Thaxcor noticed the scars on the man's hands, old marks that spoke of countless battles. "Do you know what humans did before we went to space, war leader? We fought each other. For land. For resources. For ideas. For pride. For revenge. For reasons so stupid we can barely remember them now. We fought with sticks and stones, then spears, then swords, then guns, then bombs, then weapons that could end all life on our world with the press of a button. Many species have violent histories," Thaxcor said dismissively. "But most species stopped when they reached the stars," Webb continued. "They found new frontiers and forgot their violent ways. Humans never forgot. We just got quieter about it. We took 10,000 years of military history, every battle, every tactic, every strategy, and we refined it. We studied it. We turned warfare into a science and then into an art form." The younger woman pulled up new images. Battles from human history. Armies clashing across fields. Fleets destroying each other in ancient oceans. Cities burning. Mushroom clouds rising over civilization. And finally, simulations of space combat that made Thaxcor's tactical officer hiss with shock. "These simulations," the officer said slowly. "They're showing battle scenarios we've never seen before. Tactics that shouldn't work. Strategies that violate standard military doctrine." "Human military doctrine," Webb corrected. "We don't fight the way you fight. We don't follow the rules you follow. When we wage war, we wage it with every tool at our disposal. Deception, psychological warfare, asymmetric tactics. We don't seek honorable combat. We seek victory at any cost." Thaxcor felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, genuine uncertainty. "You're trying to frighten me with words and pictures. When our fleets clash, your tricks won't matter. We outnumber you 5-1. Sarah nodded. "You do. But war leader, let me tell you about a battle from human history. It's called Thermopylae. 300 soldiers held off an army of hundreds of thousands for 3 days. They used terrain, tactics, and absolute refusal to surrender. They all died, but they bought time for their civilization to prepare. The invaders eventually retreated." "And this is supposed to impress me?" Thaxcor snorted. "No," Sarah said. "This is supposed to warn you. That battle happened when humans fought with bronze spears. Now we fight with weapons that can sterilize planets. Imagine what we can do with modern technology and ancient tactical wisdom." "You're still just one world," Thaxcor insisted, but his voice lacked conviction now. Webb smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "War leader, how many of your ships have reliable long-range communication with your home worlds?" Thaxcor's blood went cold. "All of them." "Why?" "Try contacting your colonies right now, any of them. We'll wait." The demand was so specific, so confident, that Thaxcor couldn't stop himself from gesturing to his communications officer. The officer worked at his station for several minutes, his expression growing increasingly frantic. "War leader," the officer said quietly, "I'm detecting massive interference across all long-range channels. It's targeted specifically at our frequencies. Someone has deployed jamming satellites throughout our territory." "When?" Thaxcor roared. "Based on the coverage pattern, they've been there for months at least. Positioned perfectly to disrupt all our command and control networks." Thaxcor turned to Webb, his claws extending to full length. "You violated our territory. This is an act of war." "No," Webb said calmly. "This is a demonstration. We wanted you to understand something important before this conversation ended. While you were conquering systems and making demands, we were already inside your empire. Our ships, disguised as civilian traders, have been mapping your every installation, every supply line, every communication relay. We know where your shipyards are. We know where your ammunition dumps are. We know where your leaders sleep." The younger woman pulled up another display. Detailed schematics of Krell military bases, real-time tracking data on Krell fleet positions, even blueprints of the ship they were currently standing on. "How did you get these?" Thaxcor whispered. "We asked nicely," Sarah said. "Your people were very helpful. They never suspected that the friendly human merchants buying their goods were actually intelligence operatives. Why would they? Everyone knows humans are harmless." Thaxcor realized with growing horror that he'd been outmaneuvered before the war even started. The humans had infiltrated his entire empire while pretending to be victims. They'd turned his own contempt for weakness into a weapon against him. "This changes nothing," he said, trying to regain his composure. "You've shown me tricks and spycraft. When our fleets meet in open battle, numbers will decide the outcome." "Will they?" Webb asked. He pulled out a small device and pressed a button. 3 minutes ago, I activated a signal that our ships have been waiting for. Right now, in 87 locations throughout your empire, automated weapons platforms are coming online. They've been disguised as mining equipment, cargo containers, and communications relays for the past year. Each one is equipped with weapons that make your plasma cannons look like children's toys. Thaxcor's tactical officer frantically checked his sensors. His face went pale. "Confirmed, War Leader. I'm detecting power signatures consistent with military-grade systems activating throughout our territory. They're positioned near every major installation and fleet assembly point." "You're bluffing," Thaxcor said, but his voice was shaking now. "You wouldn't dare activate those weapons. It would mean total war." Sarah stepped forward, and for the first time, Thaxcor saw something in her eyes that made his warrior instincts scream in terror. It was the look of someone who had seen war, who understood its cost, and who was willing to pay that price anyway. "War Leader, let me be absolutely clear. Earth does not want war. We've spent 15 years avoiding it, hiding our strength, pretending to be what we're not. But the Phelios people are burning. Their children are enslaved. Their world is dying. The Council asked for our help, and we will provide it, even if it means showing the galaxy what humans are truly capable of." "You would risk everything for aliens you barely know?" Thaxcor asked, genuinely confused. "Yes," Sarah said simply. "Because that's what civilized beings do. They protect the weak. They stand up to bullies. They sacrifice for others. These are not signs of weakness, War Leader. These are signs of strength. The kind of strength your empire has never understood." Webb pulled up one final image. It showed the Krell home world, detailed down to individual city blocks. "We could end your civilization right now. One signal, and those weapons platforms activate. Your fleets would be crippled. Your logistics would collapse. Your worlds would be defenseless. We could do to you what you did to Phelios, except faster and more thoroughly." "But we won't," Sarah added quickly, "because we're not conquerors. We're protectors. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to order your fleets to withdraw from all Council territories immediately. You're going to pay reparations to the Philios survivors. You're going to submit to galactic law and join the Council as a member species, not as conquerors. And if I refuse? Thaxcor asked, his pride demanding one last show of defiance. Webb's smile was colder than the void outside. Then you'll learn firsthand why humans are the only species in the galaxy that has over 300 words for different types of warfare. We've spent our entire existence perfecting the art of destroying each other. Imagine what we can do when we focus that expertise on someone else. Thaxcor looked around his bridge. His officers wouldn't meet his eyes. They'd seen the data. They'd heard the threats. They understood what he was only now beginning to accept. The Krell Empire had provoked the wrong enemy. I need time to consult with my leadership, Thaxcor said finally. You have 12 hours, Sarah said. After that, we'll assume you've chosen war. General Webb has spent the past year planning the most efficient way to dismantle your empire. He's quite eager to test his theories. It's not personal, Webb added, but if you force us to fight, we'll fight in a way that ensures no one ever threatens the Council again. Your empire will become a cautionary tale, a reminder that appearing weak is not the same as being weak. The human delegation left the bridge without another word. Thaxcor stood in silence, staring at the tactical displays that showed his empire riddled with hidden weapons, his fleets monitored by invisible watchers, his command structure compromised by merchants who smiled while gathering intelligence. What do we do, war leader? His second-in-command asked quietly. Thaxcor thought about the Philios world burning below. He thought about his own home world, vulnerable to weapons he couldn't see. He thought about the 3 humans who had walked onto his flagship and casually dismantled every assumption the Krell held about strength and weakness. Send a message to our fleets, he said slowly. Order a general withdrawal from all Council territories. War leader, our ancestors would call this cowardice. Our ancestors never faced an enemy like this, Thaxcor replied. The humans were right about one thing. True strength isn't just the ability to conquer, it's the wisdom to know when you're beaten before the first shot is fired. The news of the Krell withdrawal spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every Council world knew that the mighty Krell Empire had stood down without a single shot being fired. Within days, the full story emerged. Humanity. The gentle farmers and artists, who everyone had pitied for their weakness, had been hiding military capabilities that rivaled the greatest powers in known space. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, but this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Fear and suspicion replaced the usual diplomatic courtesy. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked into the chamber to find weapons sensors pointed at her position, security forces standing at maximum alert, and delegates who wouldn't meet her eyes. The Korthian delegate rose immediately, its mandibles clicking with agitation. Ambassador Chen, this council demands an explanation. You deceived us for 15 years. You violated the terms of your protected status. You deployed weapons throughout council space without permission. These are acts of bad faith that cannot be ignored. Sarah took her seat calmly. We violated nothing. The terms restricted military expansion beyond our home system. We didn't expand. We were already there. The terms prevented weapons development beyond current levels. We didn't develop new weapons. We simply built more of what we already had. The terms said nothing about honesty regarding our existing capabilities. A technicality, the Kix delegate pulsed angrily. You deliberately misled this council about the nature of your civilization. Yes, Sarah admitted without hesitation. We lied through omission. We hid our strength. We pretended to be helpless when we were actually quite dangerous. And in doing so, we've lived 15 years in peace, contributed to galactic culture, formed friendships with dozens of species, and ultimately used our hidden strength to save council worlds from invasion. I fail to see the tragedy here. The Varath representative spoke, its voice like grinding stone. "The tragedy, Ambassador, is that we can no longer trust you. How do we know you're not planning to conquer us next? You've demonstrated the capability and the willingness to deceive." Sarah's expression hardened. "With respect, that's a ridiculous concern. If Earth wanted to conquer the galaxy, we could have started 15 years ago when no one knew our capabilities. Instead, we asked for protection, paid our council dues, traded fairly, shared our culture, and generally acted like model citizens. When the Krell threatened, we revealed ourselves not to seize power, but to defend others. Our actions speak louder than your paranoia." The Malthorian delegate, its scales shifting to contemplative blue, spoke carefully. "There is wisdom in the ambassador's words, but also danger. Humanity has shown itself capable of strategic deception on a scale we've never encountered. How can we rebuild trust when the foundation was based on false assumptions?" "By recognizing why we deceived you in the first place," Sarah replied. She stood and walked to the center of the chamber, looking at each delegate in turn. "When humanity first reached for the stars, we were terrified. We'd just emerged from centuries of global warfare that nearly destroyed us. We knew what we were capable of. We knew our history of violence and conquest. We knew that if we appeared strong, we'd be seen as a threat. Strong species get challenged. They get drawn into conflicts. They make enemies." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Wars, devastation, weapons of unimaginable horror. Then the same display showed human culture, art, music, literature, the achievements of civilization when it wasn't destroying itself. "We are both of these things," Sarah continued. "We are warriors and poets, killers and healers, capable of terrible violence and incredible compassion. When we joined the galactic community, we had a choice. Show you the warriors and be feared, or show you the poets and be accepted. We chose acceptance because we genuinely wanted peace." "But you kept the warriors in reserve," the Korthian clicked accusingly. "Of course we did," Sarah said. "Because peace is wonderful, but it only works when everyone chooses it. The Krell didn't choose peace. They chose conquest. So we showed them the warriors we'd kept hidden, and we gave them a choice. Withdraw or be destroyed. They chose wisely." The Keek's delegate quivered with agitation. "This is exactly what we feared. Humanity playing judge, jury, and executioner. Who gave you the authority to threaten an entire empire?" "You did," Sarah said simply. "When you voted to grant us protected status, you recognized our sovereignty. When the Council failed to protect Phelios, you created a vacuum of power. We filled it. We did what you couldn't or wouldn't do. We stopped the Krell." "By threatening genocide," the Kix pulsed. "Your General Webb admitted to having weapons capable of sterilizing planets." "Having weapons and using them are different things," Sarah replied. "Yes, we have terrible weapons. So does every other major species in this chamber. The difference is that we've actually used ours on ourselves, so we know exactly what the cost would be. That knowledge makes us more careful, not less." The debate raged for hours. Some delegates wanted to revoke Earth's Council membership entirely. Others argued for strict oversight and limitations on human military operations. A few, like the Malthorian representative, suggested that humanity's actions had ultimately saved lives and should be recognized as such. Finally, the Varath delegate called for order. "Ambassador Chen, I will ask you a direct question, and the future of human council relations may depend on your answer. If this council votes to restrict your military capabilities, to place observers on your worlds, to limit your expansion, will you comply?" Sarah looked at the massive stone-like being for a long moment. "No." Shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Korthian's mandibles clacked with outrage. "You refuse the authority of this council?" "I refuse demands made from fear rather than reason," Sarah clarified. This council has no authority to tell a sovereign species what weapons they can build or maintain. You never had that authority, even when we pretended you did. The protected status we requested was a gift you gave us, and we were grateful. But we're not children who need your permission to defend ourselves. Then what's to stop you from becoming the next Krell? The Kix demanded. What prevents Earth from using its hidden military to conquer as you please? Sarah smiled sadly. The same thing that's stopped us for the past 15 years. Ourselves. Do you know why we hid our strength? Not because we feared you would attack us, but because we feared we might use it if provoked. We know what we're capable of. We know our history. We know how easy it is to justify violence when you have the power to commit it. She pulled up images of Earth's military command structure. Every single person in our defense forces is required to study history. Not just military history, but the history of peace, of reconciliation, of civilizations that chose cooperation over conflict. We teach our soldiers about the horrors of war so they'll do everything possible to avoid it. We show our generals the cost of victory so they'll understand that war is always a failure, even when you win. Pretty words, the Korthian clicked. But how do we know you mean them? Because I'm about to prove it, Sarah replied. She pulled out a data chip and held it up. This contains complete technical specifications for every weapon system Earth has developed. Shield frequencies, weapon capabilities, defense platform locations, everything you would need to defend against human military action. The chamber went absolutely silent. Even the Kix stopped pulsing for a moment. You can't be serious, the Malthorian said, its scales shifting to shocked white. You're giving us your military secrets? Yes, Sarah said. She placed the chip on the council speaker's podium. Because the greatest weapon isn't the one you build. It's the trust you establish. Earth doesn't want to be feared. We want to be partners. If giving you the information you need to trust us is what it takes, then here it is. This could be another deception, the Korthian said. But its voice lacked conviction now. Then verify it, Sarah challenged. Send your scientists, inspect our facilities, test our claims. You'll find that everything on this chip is accurate and complete. We're not hiding anymore. The galaxy knows what we are now. Warriors and peacekeepers, killers and protectors, dangerous and trustworthy. The Verath delegate picked up the chip carefully, as if it might explode. Why would you give us this? Why make yourselves vulnerable? Because vulnerability is the foundation of trust, Sarah replied. We could keep our secrets and remain mysterious and frightening. But we've learned that fear is a terrible basis for diplomacy, so instead we're choosing transparency. Judge us by our actions, not your assumptions. Over the next 3 months, Council scientists verified every piece of information on the chip. They found no deceptions, no hidden capabilities beyond what was documented. Earth had indeed revealed everything. The gesture shocked the galaxy perhaps more than the revelation of humanity's military might had. The Krell Empire, meanwhile, accepted Council authority and began the slow process of integration. War leader Thaxcor, now renamed Counselor Thaxcor, met with Sarah several months after the crisis ended. They stood on a council observation deck, watching ships from dozens of species pass by peacefully. I still don't understand you, Ambassador, Thaxcor rumbled. You had us beaten. You could have destroyed my empire and seized our territories. Instead, you helped us join the council. Why? Sarah smiled. Because we've been where you are, Counselor. Earth spent thousands of years conquering and being conquered. We built empires and watched them fall. We learned eventually that conquest is empty. It brings territory but not prosperity, subjects but not allies, fear but not respect. We don't want to repeat our mistakes on a galactic scale. But you kept your weapons. You didn't disarm even after revealing yourselves. No, Sarah agreed, because the galaxy is dangerous, and we'd be fools to make ourselves helpless. But there's a difference between having weapons and wanting to use them. We have the capability to wage war, but we've spent 15 years building the wisdom to avoid it whenever possible. Thaxcor was quiet for a moment. My people think I'm weak for surrendering without a fight. They don't understand that sometimes the strongest choice is to admit you're outmatched. Your people are alive, Sarah pointed out. Your worlds are intact. Your culture continues. That's not weakness, counselor. That's survival. It's the same choice Earth made 15 years ago when we asked for protected status. We knew we couldn't fight the whole galaxy, so we chose not to try. Now, you've made the same choice. There's no shame in it. The Krell counselor looked at the human woman who had dismantled his empire without firing a shot. You're a strange species, Ambassador. Dangerous and peaceful at the same time. I hope the galaxy is ready for you. Sarah laughed. The galaxy doesn't need to be ready for us. We'll adapt to the galaxy, just like we've always adapted. That's humanity's real strength, counselor. Not our weapons or our strategies, but our ability to change, to grow, to become something better than we were. We've been pretending to be peaceful for 15 years. Maybe if we keep pretending long enough, it'll become true. Back on Earth, General Webb stood in the same underground facility where he'd watched Sarah's first council appearance 15 years earlier. Around him, the displays still showed humanity's vast military capability, but now they also showed something new: joint training exercises with council forces, technology sharing agreements, cultural exchange programs. Dr. Tanaka stood beside him, watching the same displays. We revealed everything. No more secrets. How do you feel about that? Webb was quiet for a long moment. Relieved, actually. Keeping secrets is exhausting and expensive. Now we can focus on being what we always pretended to be. Peaceful? Prepared, Webb corrected. There's a difference. We're not dismantling our military. We're not becoming helpless. But we don't have to hide anymore. The galaxy knows what we are now, and they've chosen to work with us instead of against us. That's better than I hoped for. Tanaka nodded. The Krell incident taught everyone an important lesson. Hidden strength is more frightening than obvious power. Maybe, Webb said, or maybe the lesson is that humanity's real weapon was never our technology. It was our patience. We were willing to wait 15 years, pretending to be weak, preparing for a threat that might never come. What other species would do that? One that's survived as long as we have, Tanaka replied. One that's seen empires rise and fall on Earth alone. We know how to play the long game, Webb smiled. And now the galaxy knows it too. We pretended to be helpless until they chose war. Then we showed them what humanity really is. Not conquerors, not victims, just survivors who are very, very good at adapting to whatever situation we face. Across the galaxy, the story of Earth's deception became legend. Young species studying galactic history learned about the humans who hid their strength for 15 years, who revealed themselves only to protect others, who gave away their military secrets to build trust. The tale was told as a lesson in strategy, in patience, in the difference between power and wisdom. The Galactic Council established new protocols for evaluating protected worlds, recognizing that assumptions about weakness could be dangerously wrong. The Krell integrated slowly into Council society, always aware that they'd been beaten by an opponent who never wanted to fight in the first place. And Earth continued its dual existence as both warrior and peacekeeper, always armed but rarely aggressive, always dangerous but consistently diplomatic. They'd learned to balance their violent heritage with their peaceful aspirations, and in doing so, they'd taught the galaxy an important lesson. True strength isn't about how much power you have. It's about how rarely you need to use it. Earth had pretended to be helpless for 15 years, but when the galaxy chose war, they proved that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who've been quietly preparing while everyone else was looking away. Sarah Chen retired from her position as ambassador 5 years after the Krell incident. She gave a final speech to the council, standing in the same spot where she'd first asked for protection 2 decades earlier. "When Earth joined this council, we were afraid," she said. "Afraid of the galaxy. Afraid of ourselves. Afraid of what might happen if our violent nature encountered species we couldn't defeat. So we hid. We pretended. We played a role. And in playing that role, something interesting happened. We became what we were pretending to be. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to matter." She looked around the chamber at faces that had become familiar over the years. Friends, allies, even former enemies. Earth will never be completely peaceful. We'll always have our weapons, our soldiers, our contingency plans for war. But we'll also have our artists, our philosophers, our dreamers who believe in something better. We are both, and we always will be. The galaxy will just have to accept that humanity contains multitudes. The council gave her a standing ovation, something that had never happened before in its 1,000-year history. As Sarah left the chamber for the last time, the Malthorian delegate caught up with her. "Tell me something, Ambassador," it said, its scales shifting to curious green. "If the Krell had actually attacked instead of withdrawing, would you really have gone through with it? Would Earth have fought an empire 5 times your size?" Sarah looked at the alien, and her smile contained both sadness and steel. "Counselor, I hope we never have to find out. But if you're asking whether humanity is capable of fighting hopeless battles out of sheer stubbornness and moral conviction, then I suggest you study our history more carefully. We've done it before. We'd do it again. We just prefer not to." She walked away, leaving the Malthorian to ponder the mystery of humanity. A species that had pretended to be helpless for 15 years. A species that revealed their strength only to protect others. A species that gave away their secrets to build trust. A species that was somehow both the most dangerous and most peaceful civilization the galaxy had ever encountered. Earth's pretense of helplessness had ended, but the legacy of that deception lived on. The galaxy had learned to look beyond appearances, to question assumptions, to understand that weakness and strength were often matters of perspective and timing. And humanity had learned that sometimes the best way to avoid war is to be so dangerous that no one dares to start one, while simultaneously being so trustworthy that no one wants to. The lesson was complete. The galaxy had chosen war, and Earth had shown them exactly what that choice would cost. Now, with that knowledge shared by all, perhaps peace had a better chance than ever before. Not because anyone was weak, but because everyone finally understood the true price of violence and the greater value of cooperation. Sarah Chen returned to Earth and lived quietly for the rest of her life. She never spoke publicly about her years of diplomatic deception. She didn't need to. The galaxy remembered, and in remembering, they learned. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is convince your enemies you're not worth fighting. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is reveal your strength only when others need it most. Earth had pretended to be helpless. Then the galaxy chose war. And humanity showed them all that pretending to be weak is very different from actually being weak. The question was never whether humans could fight. The question was whether they needed to. And for 15 years, the answer had been no. When it finally became yes, the galaxy learned more about humanity in a single conversation than they had in a decade and a half of peaceful coexistence. The lesson was simple but profound. Never underestimate someone who chooses peace when they're capable of war. They're not weak. They're just wise enough to know that some victories aren't worth the cost. And if you force them to fight anyway, you'll discover exactly why they were trying so hard to avoid it.